Okay, everybody, welcome to this AP Computer Science Review video. Today we're going to be looking at the 2D array unit of the AP curriculum. So let's jump over and take a look at that. All right, so the 2D array. So let's introduce this concept as it appears in the AP curriculum. So it focuses on the multi-dimensional array structure. In other words, an array of arrays, a table, a set of rows and columns. There are lots of different ways you can look at this. If you're wondering, did we cover this? Yes, in the Computer Science 30S course. Not only do I cover arrays, but then I end the unit by looking at multi-dimensional arrays, often known as a matrix. So we have definitely covered this before in the Computer Science 30S course, and it's expanded on in the Computer Science 40S course. All right, so what is the specific learning outcomes? So you need to know what a 2D array is, and you need to know how to travel or traverse a 2D array. So you can also see that big ideas include variables and control. That's what it covers there, okay? And as far as the weighting on the AP curriculum, the 2D array is between 7.5 to 10% of the exam content. So it matches up with inheritance. It's a little bit more than primitive types or using objects. It's a little less than the array itself. It's a little more than the array list. So arrays, array lists, and 2D arrays all kind of mix together into these data structures that you'd be studying. All right, let's move on from that to Curriculum Content 8.1, the 2D array. So the specific learning outcomes you can see are laid out here by the AP curriculum. You can pause this video to read in more detail, but let's look at how I reviewed this in the Computer Science 30S course. That after studying arrays, to think of a two-dimensional array is think of it as an array of arrays, which could be thought of as a set of rows and columns, or width and height. There are various ways you can look at it, X and Y, okay? A grid, a table, also known as a matrix, where a single array contains other arrays inside of it. And it's created using the same methods as you declare regular arrays, okay? You can even, although the AP curriculum doesn't go into this, go into three-dimensional, four-dimensional arrays. The number of dimensions doesn't really matter. It is about storing data. Okay, so you put the type of the array, so the data type, you put the name, you put two sets of square brackets this time for a two-dimensional array, then your equal sign, then your new operator, then the type again, and then two more sets of brackets with each dimension inside the brackets. For example, here is a matrix of 5 by 10. Now, if you want to think of it at 5 rows and 10 columns, that's fine. But the rows and columns part isn't important to the computer. It's important to you as you visualize this array. Which is the rows, which is the columns, which is the dimension we're talking about here. It also depends how you use the array as you traverse through it. All right, there is no limit to this. So here you can see also me building a simple tic-tac-toe board using a two-dimensional array. You can certainly create three-dimensional arrays and higher dimensional arrays. But that was how I reviewed, or how I taught the concept of the arrays. But in way more detail do I go in during the example part. So if that was way too quick for you to understand what a multi-dimensional array was, please go back to the 30S unit called arrays and look at the videos and the content section there, and look at the example we did with two-dimensional arrays or matrices, where you can really see the two-dimensional array explained in much more detail. This is a review video. All right, let's look at 2D array section 8.2, traversing 2D arrays. So traversing 2D arrays is basically the same as traversing one-dimensional arrays, except now instead of using a single for loop, you use nested for loops. Okay? So here is an example of a nested set of for loops going through rows and columns. You can see that again in this little piece of code, but I would definitely recommend that if you really want to look at a better example of this, I would go into the 30S example code of how to work with a matrix, and there you will see for loops and nested for loops going and traversing two-dimensional arrays and the various different ways you can do that in the different examples. All right, so this is going to be a very quick video. That is now going to summarize the idea of a two-dimensional array. The reason I think this video is so quick is because, to me, 2D arrays and arrays are the same basic concept. The AP has specifically divided them into two separate units, but to me they're all part of arrays in general. They're static data structures of 1 or 2 dimensions, or 3 dimensions if you want, or more. But if you got a general idea of arrays, it isn't a huge leap to think about two-dimensional arrays. As long as you practice and get some exercises kind of moving forward with that. So we started this unit with the specifics from the AP curriculum as it was laid out and the specific weighting. We did cover what is a 2D array and how to traverse a 2D array. Okay. Here is an example of a AP question, exam question using that. So you can see a 2D array called R that is declared, which is a 3 rows, 4 column type array. So you can see the first row is a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. The second row is a 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. Okay, 3 rows, 4 columns. Then what we see is we see a variable sum, okay, set to 0 outside the loops. Then we see a for loop, specifically a for loop to go through the array using the variable x. So it's an enhanced for loop. Inside of that, we see a standard for loop using the variable y going to x.length. So it's treating x like its own separate array within the, which is what I started this with, an array of arrays, right? So basically, the sum variable is summing up each individual spot, right? Since x is a 1D array, the inner for loop travels from 0, but it goes to 1 less. So that's interesting, right? It's not actually traveling through every column spot. It's going from to 1 less. So really, this for loop, okay, it's going to spot 3. So 0, 1, 2. It's not really going to elements there. So it's really adding up to 54, which gives you the correct answer of B. All right. So that summarizes my review video of two-dimensional arrays. We'll just quickly look at a little bit more on that, right? So just like we looked at what an array is back in the AP video on arrays, if I go through this to near the end, you can see the idea of the multi-dimensional array as well, right? So the multi-dimensional array, so if we start with a variable, move it to an array, which has 1 dimension, then a matrix has 2 dimensions. It has rows and columns. It has a height and a width. It has an x and a y. You can call it a matrix. You can call it a 2-dimensional array. You can call it an array of arrays. Call it a grid. Call it a table. You can visualize this thing. You can even maybe start to visualize arrays of dimensions beyond 2, like a 3-dimensional array. But the idea is there that you specifically tailor your knowledge to what the AP wants as part of their curricular content on the specific topic of the 2-dimensional array. All right, that was a short little review video, but like and follow and watch for more review videos of the AP computer science content.